The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
The Israel war against Hamas has now spread to the whole of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Forces on Sunday announced they were expanding their ground operations to all of Gaza following the collapse of a truce with Hamas on Friday. IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari told a news conference the IDF is resuming and expanding the ground operation against Hamas's strongholds across the whole Gaza Strip. Our policy is clear. We will forcefully strike any threat posed against our territory. The IDF has told civilians to leave large swaths of Gaza, including scores of neighborhoods in the southern parts of the enclave. On Sunday, the IDF told people to evacuate several areas southeast of the southern city of Khan Yunis, where many Palestinians have sought shelter in recent weeks. Remember, it was Israel which had been asking people all along to leave northern Gaza and move to the south for their own safety. The question is, with the entire Gaza Strip now turning into a war zone, where can the Palestinian civilians go? Hamas has said its fighters clashed with Israeli troops about 2 kilometers from the southern city of Khan Yunis. Residents, many of whom had moved there to flee earlier attacks, said they could hear tank fire and feared a new Israeli ground offensive was building. The Jabalia refugee camp in the north of Hamas-ruled Gaza was amongst the sites reportedly hit. The Gazan Health Ministry has said several people were killed in this particular Israeli airstrike. Bombardments from warplanes and artillery were also concentrated on Khan Yunis and Rafah, another city in Gaza's south. This as hospitals are struggling to cope with the flow of the wounded. The latest instance of violence took place despite calls from the United States, Israel's closest ally, for Israel to limit harm to Palestinian civilians. The UN estimates that up to 1.8 million people in Gaza, that's nearly 80% of the population, are internally displaced thanks to the ongoing war. The head of Israel's Shin Bet security agency, Ronen Bar, has said Israel is determined to eliminate Hamas around the world, even if it takes years. This is our Munich, he said, referencing Israel's targeted assassination campaign against Palestinian operatives following deadly terrorist attacks by Black September against Israelis at the 1972 Olympics in Germany. The Shin Bet chief said, and I quote, "The cabinet has set us a goal. In the words of the street, it is to eliminate Hamas, and we are determined to do it. This is our Munich. Everywhere, in Gaza, Israel, Lebanon, Turkey, Qatar, everywhere. It'll take a few years, but we will be there to do it. The security responsibility is ours. Our duty is to provide both security and a sense of security. Unfortunately, on the 7th of October, we were unable to do it. I think we're on the rise. We are not waiting. We are already drawing our lessons from the events," he said. Meanwhile, Israel says it killed the commander of Hamas's Shati battalion in an airstrike on Sunday. Haitham Khuvajiri was responsible for carrying out raids into Israeli territory during the 7th October attack. In a call with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Qatar's Prime Minister once again called for a ceasefire in Gaza. This comes as the U.S. steps up pressure on Israel to do more to protect civilians. Vice President Kamala Harris is the latest to join the growing chorus. French President Emmanuel Macron has called on Israel to better define its goals for the conflict, arguing that the total destruction of Hamas would take a decade of fighting. Meanwhile, the IDF has claimed that it has destroyed about 500 Hamas tunnels in Gaza during its offensive and that it has located more than 800 tunnel shafts in the enclave. It says many were located in civilian areas and structures. The IDF targets included a school in the northeastern town of Beit Hanun, which the IDF claims contained terror infrastructure, including tunnel shafts stocked with weapons and explosives. 3 more Israeli soldiers have been killed in the fighting against Hamas, bringing the number of IDF losses inside the Palestinian enclave to almost 70 since the military operation began in October. Israeli attacks in Gaza have resulted in the deaths of 15,900 Palestinians since the 7th of October, according to the latest figures put out by the Palestinian Health Ministry. In another major development, 3 commercial vessels came under attack in international waters in the southern Red Sea, according to the US military, as Yemen's Houthi group claimed drone and missile attacks on 2 Israeli vessels in the area on Sunday. Attacks on shipping in the southern Red Sea have heightened fears of the conflict spreading. Over the weekend, Israel recalled its team of negotiators from Qatar after reaching a dead end in talks aimed at securing a fresh pause in fighting with Hamas. Negotiations broke down over the terms for releasing women still being held in Gaza.
We have entered a new phase in our war against Hamas. Hamas broke the humanitarian pause when it violated the hostage release agreement by refusing to release women, children, and babies as agreed. Hamas also fired rockets at Israeli homes. It should be clear to everyone by now, Hamas chooses war. Hamas chose war when it broke the hostage release agreement on December 1st. We pursued them in northern Gaza. We're now pursuing Hamas in southern Gaza too. We will operate in maximum force against Hamas terrorists and infrastructures while minimizing harm to the civilian that Hamas places around them as shields. We're pursuing Hamas wherever Hamas is hiding, in the north and in the south. Every rocket launcher, weapons depot, command and control center, senior commander, underground infrastructure, and any hideout where our hostages may be held. Our war is against Hamas, not against the people of Gaza. We also call on international organizations to ensure that the Red Cross gains access to our hostages in Hamas captivity. 137 hostages are being held in inhumane and brutal conditions, and not one international organization has seen them.
In the northern Gaza Strip, we've dismantled 2 Hamas brigades, with the 167 Division still securing our gains. We've eliminated brigade and company commanders, and our operations in southern Gaza Strip are underway with equal strength and results. The IDF will confront Hamas commanders vigorously everywhere. We have the capabilities and fighting spirit for thorough operations, as seen in the north and ongoing in the south, to secure our achievements.
It's devastating what happened 2 days ago. It's devastating what's been happening since the 7th of October, but we had a glimmer of hope with the pause, with the release of hostages, with the liberation of Palestinian prisoners, and especially with the fact that because of no fighting, aid could go into Gaza. In the most immediate, we need to go back, they need to go back to that pause, humanitarian pause, ceasefire, call it as you want, so that the whole more positive processes can start again, including putting aid into Gaza to help people that are at risk of their lives. We have to go back to the peace process. The peace process has been neglected, almost ridiculed for so many years as something irrelevant. Well, everything that has happened in the last 6-7 weeks proves the point that that was a colossal miscalculation.
Right now, Netanyahu, who is the butcher of Gaza, beyond being a war criminal, will certainly be tried as the butcher of Gaza, just as Milosevic was tried. Netanyahu, the butcher of Gaza, personally revealed in front of cameras that the issue is not of Gaza or Ramallah, but that he is after expansionist goals. Therefore, defending Gaza and Palestine today means defending Mecca, Medina, Istanbul, along with Jerusalem, defending Damascus, Beirut, Baghdad, and other Islamic cities.
All right. So, what does the expansion of this war to the whole of the Gaza Strip really mean, as has been officially declared now by the Israeli Defense Forces? Let's try and unpack this with our guests. Joining me on the show tonight, Colonel Miri Aysin, Director at the International Institute for Counterterrorism at the Reichman University in Israel. We're also joined by Dr. Harel Choreh, Palestinian Affairs expert at the Moshe Dayan Center at the Tel Aviv University. And in a moment, we're also hoping to be joined by our Indian guest, Major General Sanjay Meston, a defense and geopolitical expert. All right, Colonel Miri Aysin, if I could begin with you. Welcome back to Global Lens. You know, it had been suspected for days now that the war was expanding. And now the IDF has officially declared that the war is being fought all over the Gaza Strip. People in many areas, including near Khan Yunis, are being asked to evacuate, move to other places. But you know, there are scores and scores of Palestinians who had moved to these areas in the first place after being asked to do so by Israel. So the question is, what does the expansion of this war really mean? And, you know, this is a question that I have to ask repeatedly. Where do the Palestinian civilians go?
Neha, these are the most important questions right now. And at the end, I'm looking both at the aim that we have in Israel, and I'm looking out for civilians. I'm going to say this in a very odd way, perhaps. We in Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces, in the different attacks against Hamas, we're trying to save civilian lives. We are telling people to leave. In its own way, as we've been doing so, when we first told the civilians up north to go down south to save their lives, they were told to go to specific areas that were the safe areas defined at the time that have never been attacked. Here, you and I, we can understand that not everybody is going to do that. They're going to go perhaps to their relatives, to where they feel safer, in, for example, the area of Khan Yunis. But Nia, at the heart of Khan Yunis is where Yahya Sinwar is from. And they all know that. Yahya Sinwar is not a invisible figure. He was born in Khan Yunis. He established, in that sense, Hamas, and has commanded Hamas from Khan Yunis, from his release from Israeli prison in 2011. When Israel said to the civilians, go to safe places, there was a designated map. Then we were told that the map was not clear enough. This time, Israel has put out an additional map. This time, we're being told that it's too complicated for civilians. At the end, there are clear-cut areas within the Gaza Strip. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it nice. This is a horrible war, but it is saving people's lives, telling them to go to areas in the Gaza Strip. And yes, there still is enough room for that amount of people. And it could all end if Hamas, led by Yahya Sinwar, as they have done, would release the 150 hostages that they have, would put down their arms and stop firing rockets at Israel, and stop saying, as they have done, that they're going to continue these attacks like October 7th against Israel. So we're trying to do that step by step, telling the people to go to areas that have been very clearly defined. There are excellent maps, I guess too detailed. They have been come from the air. They've been sent into people's telephones, defining specifically where to go for a safe area in the Gaza Strip. As I said, it's to save lives. This isn't about an easy situation. It's a horrible war.
All right, you say that, you know, we're telling them to go to completely safe areas. However, the situation on the ground seems to suggest the exact opposite, that there is no safe space left in Gaza anymore. Just for the benefit of our viewers, I want to quickly share some important facts. Just this evening, the Palestinian Health Ministry has updated the death toll. We are now told that 15,900 Palestinians have been killed in the Israeli counteroffensive that began on the 7th of October, and thousands of these people were children. According to the United Nations, up to 1.8 million people in Gaza, that's nearly 80% of the population, are internally displaced. Let me now go across to our other Israeli guest, Dr. Harel Chore. So, have I got the pronunciation of your surname correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. So, my question to you is this. Even though the United States, your closest ally, is standing solidly by your side, but fact of the matter is that there seems to be growing unease and anxiety even within the Biden administration, given the rising death toll in Gaza. You've had President Biden, Antony Blinken, now Vice President Kamala Harris say repeatedly, Israel needs to do more to protect civilians. The French president has made a very interesting statement. Emmanuel Macron says Israel needs to better define its goals for this conflict because the total destruction of Hamas would take a decade of fighting. How would you respond to this?
Well, let me start with saying that I don't know where Macron has the tools or the knowledge to know that it will take us a decade. I don't know upon what he's establishing such a determined argument. I don't think it will take a decade. And I'll tell you even more than that. Even if it will take a decade, it doesn't mean that we won't do it. Simply because what we've experienced here on October 7, let me remind all our viewers, is a genocide according to any definition of international law. Okay, genocide. They raped our women. They killed. They beheaded. They burned babies. So it's not a question even for us if we should do it, and whatever Macron will say, despite of the fact we of course respect all our friends. It is something that Israelis, really left to right, are totally agree upon the necessity to destroy Hamas. And if destroying Hamas will take us months or even a little bit more than that, this is exactly what we'll do, because we don't have any other option regarding such a threat on our borders and on our region, by the way, not just on Israel.